I'm a rookie, don't know anything, can't play a lick, right? Have no business in that league. And I'm sitting in the locker room before Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals playing Michael Jordan with Larry Bird crying in the locker room pregame. How good is my life?
All right, joining us now is the head coach of your BYU Cougars. He is the 1992 Pac-10 Freshman of the Year. He is a 1996 national champion. He is a lacrosse Bobcat legend. His name is Mark Pope. Coach, I want to start here. All the talk in the sports world, certainly in the basketball world right now, is this Bulls documentary, The Last Dance, Michael Jordan's last year with the Chicago Bulls. You were a member of the Indiana Pacers in 1998. We have, I believe, 4 more weeks of this documentary left. Do you want to get out ahead of something? And is there something coming in this documentary where you're going to make an appearance? Do you want to get out ahead of this and speak your piece before people are watching and you somehow have a surprise appearance in this thing?
Well, they're gonna have to dig really, really deep, man, to get some footage of me in this deal. I did watch it last night. We watched it. The whole family sat down and watched it. We recorded it and watched it late last night, and it just made me happy, man. I'm telling you, it was clearly it was. You guys might be actually too young to remember this, but this was a time in sports where just everything changes. Certainly with the NBA, everything changed, and this Michael Jordan. You know, in my mind, in my very narrow window, there's never been clearly never a better competitor in basketball and maybe in any sport. This guy he was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Coach, we were just hoping you didn't get the Rick Carlisle treatment like he got in the 86 with the Celtics there. Even though he only played 4 minutes, it was unfair to Rick Carlisle, especially for McCauliffer's mom. We didn't like that. So we just wanted to make sure you could get ahead of that.
Hey. All media is good media, gentlemen. All media is good media. Let's go.
We agree with that.
You were on the Pacers. Was that the? I actually do remember. So I grew up in Indiana, Coach. I was 11 years old in 1998 when you were on the Pacers team. You guys took the Bulls to 7 games in the finals. Was that the team with the shave? Were you guys all shaved your head? Yes. Is that what started the current hairdo you have now? Was that the genesis of this?
I'm telling you what, it was so disgusting. First of all, there was no way we should have done Rick Smith like that. Okay, that's just not fair. I mean, Rick, a big time player, but he loved his locks, but as a total gamer, and it was not a good look for him. And then I'm gonna throw my dear friend Freddie Hoiberg under the bus right now. Okay, so everyone came in totally clean, even Rick shaved it all down, the Duncan Dutchman, and Fred Hoiberg walked in with just a buzz cut. And so dudes were not having it. So we actually had to take Freddie into the locker room before practice and actually just take a straight razor and shave it down. He had cuts all over his head. But it was all in, man. It was all in. We were the ugliest team in America, but we were pretty good. It was a pretty good team.
Yeah, that was fun. It was a fun team to watch.
That series, that 7-game Eastern Conference Finals series, you know, that's the shot in Game 3 where Reggie pushes Michael all the way past half court and bangs that game winner, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was such an epic series. You know, I would, you know, they're not going to show the Indiana Pacers side, but I'll never forget, you know, we're Game 7 in Chicago after this, like every single game is just so dramatic. And we're in the locker room before the game, and Coach Bird is his rookie season as a coach. You know, maybe the smartest, most intuitive player to ever play the game. And he's doing his pregame, and he starts bawling. Like, I'm talking about tears. Remembering his experience when he was trying to make it to his first finals, because this Pacer team hadn't been yet.
Mm-hmm.
And he just wanted it so bad for us. Like, it was just, I mean, you think about that, man. I'm a rookie, don't know anything, can't play a lick, right? Have no business in that league. And I'm sitting in the locker room before Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals playing Michael Jordan with Larry Bird crying in the locker room pregame. How good is my life?
and a shaved head Rick Smith sitting next to you, and you're just like, what is this world I'm living in? So Tate and I were out in Maui. Our first introduction to you was basically being in Maui for the Maui Invitational at the luau's and the you remember there were it seemed like there were
yes.
there were 50 luau's before the event actually started, where you coaches had to get up there and talk and all that. And we were just like blown away at your personality and how personable you were and how loose and how fun and just engaging with the crowd and all that kind of stuff. We also picked up on just how self-deprecating you are. You've already kind of been that way in this interview. So my question to you is, where does this come from? From a guy who, you were on one of the greatest college teams of all time. As I said earlier, you were the Pac-10 freshman of the year. You beat out some really, really good players when you started your career at Washington. You played in the NBA, and you like to poke fun of yourself that you didn't play that much and all that kind of stuff. But you obviously had a very, very good career. Where does this attitude come from? And yeah, like, is this something that you've carried with you your whole life, or is it a new thing for you?
Well, first of all, just like you guys doing what you love to do, how can you not just be full of joy every day getting to do this? We're the luckiest people in the world. I mean, we're really blessed to be in this business. And in terms of the self-deprecating, that's not hard to come by when you're as bad a player as I was. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have any choice. And anybody that plays this game long enough, with the exception of a handful of the greatest players to ever play who get humbled in a different way, but anybody who's played this game long enough at a high enough level, you cannot leave this game without some humility, right? Because you understand how talented guys are, and that if you're anything but Michael Jordan, you understand that no matter how good you are, somebody can do you at any minute, right? And it's what makes the game great. It's what I love about it, is anybody can have a moment and anybody can have a night, and you learn to respect this game, and it makes it fun. So combination of being in way over my head for way too long, and also just the beauty of this game, I think.
And Coach, you mentioned it. I mean, in the documentary, MJ said, the big conversation he was having with management is, they were talking about organizational structure versus the players. And MJ says, it's about the players. And we saw in Maui, and the thing that stood out to us was, we're at these, corporate, events, and everyone's getting their meals and walking around and, talking to each other, yada, yada, yada. But your team's sitting together and you yell at your team, what do we need to do to be good? And they're just like, rebound. And they all stand up and you're like, there we go, guys. Like, that's it. It's as simple as that. And, Titus and I both love the game of basketball, and it's a simple game, when you boil it down to things like that. And that was a moment where we saw was the players were so engaged. And that's like the college basketball experience that we love so much, right?
Well, a couple things about that moment. First of all, I was actually, as I said that, and I challenged my team to stand up, I was like, in my mind, I'm thinking, this could go really bad, right?
Yes,
really bad. But then second of all, when my team stood up and everybody was 6'5" or under, I think everybody could have guessed it. The audience be like, oh, they got to rebound the ball, man. This is going to be really hard for them. But listen, for me, that Maui deal felt a little bit like my NBA career. In my NBA career, Charles Oakley, I'll never forget one of my first preseason games with the Pacers, my rookie year.
Did he slap you? Did he slap you, Coach? You can
say even better. So I grew up watching the Knicks, man. I'm a New York guy, and so that team was so good, and the Oak had such a reputation, and Coach Bird was just trying to rest guys, so he just kept me in the game a lot. I'll never forget, we're playing the Knicks at Mark Square Arena. And in like the third quarter, Oak lays me out with the elbow. Like, I was seeing stars. I was, and I just couldn't wait to get home and jump on the phone and call my mom and be like, Mom, Charles Oakley just got me something. I was so excited, right? Yeah. And walking around Maui with, Tom Izzo and all the great coaches that were there, right? That are so proven in this game. And then as good as that crew, Bill Self and you had two probably number one seeds in the NCAA tournament of that tournament, and a lot of depth. And so I was like a kid in the candy store too, just getting, hopped out with those guys.
Well, you guys played pretty well in Maui. You guys gave Kansas a pretty good game. Had a good showing. I think you kind of put I don't want to say you put BYU basketball on the map because everyone kind of already knows of BYU's program, but you know, you guys had a great team this year. You were, I think if you will remember this better than I do, but I want to say this was the highest ranking you've been since the Jimmer teams.
We haven't been ranked. We actually haven't been ranked.
Yeah, you haven't been ranked since then. So you guys had a good thing going. Obviously, the tournament getting canceled is a huge blow to I mean, I feel for you guys more than most other programs, just kind of the way you were taking over in your first year and all that. So just as you look back on your first year at BYU and the ride that it was, how do you assess it? How do you what are things you learned along the way? For all of our listeners that maybe weren't tuned in and we're counting on their introduction to Mark Pope, BYU basketball being in March when you guys went on a little run that you're now not going to go on. How would you assess how the first year went?
Well, I was really lucky. I mean, come on. I had a group of seniors that was incredibly special and that were so focused on just winning. Like, you know, the last their 3 and 4 years in their respective careers at BYU, they'd kind of repeatedly fallen short of where they wanted to be, hadn't been to an NCAA tournament, hadn't been nationally ranked. And they were just so hungry and willing to set aside. And listen, nobody really puts aside their personal agenda. Anytime you hear that, you're just like, man, this is just coach speak, because you never put aside your personal agenda. But what our guys were willing to do was they were willing to try as hard as they could to trust the game, that if they gave themselves to the game and didn't chase their own agenda, that actually the game was going to pay them back double, twice as much as it would have paid them back if they just chased their own. And that's actually an everyday renewal of a commitment, because every day you go home and your parents call you and your posse calls you and everyone's like, you got to shoot more, you got to score more, you got to be the guy, you got to get more minutes. And then you have to make this renewed commitment every day saying, hey, I'm actually going to trust the guys in my locker room more than the guys outside of my locker room and pay for them. And what we got to experience this year with this veteran group was an extraordinary locker room. We all, you know, we drove the media here crazy talking about the best locker room in America, but a locker room where our guys really did try and compete for each other. And it's the way guys played. It's a big reason why we're the best 3-point shooting team in America. And depending on the metric, we were the first, second, or third most efficient offense in the country. And why we finished the season in the top 20. And it was an unbelievable ride. So, you know, I just get to bear witness to the whole thing, right? I mean, I rolled into a team with a 4-year all-conference point guard, and Yoli Child's one of the best players in the country, and I just got to sit back and be like, woohoo, let's go. It was awesome.
I was gonna say, Coach, was it one of those things you said if you get to the game will give you back? When Yoli was 100% healthy, did you say, here's the game is giving you Yoli back, and now we're gonna get things rolling? Because once Yoli came back, you know, I mean, there was an ESPN, like they did like a mock prediction. You know, we've been talking about, you know, who the statisticians, analytics say would have won the tournament, but they had BYU in the title game. And so you guys were that hot at the end of the year. And I think that's sort of what Titus and I want to make sure we let people know, because some of that could get lost is who's hot coming to the tournament, who's that. Once Yoli was back, BYU was a real contender, you know, to make a real run.
Yeah, you guys beat Gonzaga. That was we remember that. What was that like? We were supposed to, Tate and I were actually planning on coming. Mm-hmm. We've never been to a home game at BYU, which we need to talk about this after we do the interview. We need to set this up for next year. But we had it circled. We wanted to come to the game, and then all the atmosphere, all the shots coming out of that, I was just hitting myself like, man, how did we not go to that game?
Well, you know, it was pretty special. So Sean Farnham does the ACC and SEC. He's been doing it for the last, 6-7 years with ESPN, and he keeps wanting to tell anybody that will listen. He's like, and he said it 100 times now. He's like, I've never been in a basketball environment like that ever. Mm-hmm. And it was magical, and a lot of it was because you have the Zags, who are the number 2 ranked team in the country, but haven't lost in 3 months, right? And with an unbelievable team, and we had won, I think, 7 or 8 in a row. We hadn't lost in a month, and I think we maybe ranked 17 or 16. So it was a 2-16, 2-17 game, and it was the first ranked, first time 2 ranked opponents that played the Merit Center in 10 years, And we had been on this ride all season long where the momentum just built and built and built. And we had, I don't know, 6,000 students camped out around the arena in 28-degree weather for 2 days leading up to the game. They actually came to the Santa Clara game, left the building Thursday night right after the game, grabbed their tents and got in line for the Saturday night game, man.
That's crazy.
And then, you know, all the lead up to the game was unbelievable. And then these BYU fans stormed the court after, and our seniors got a chance to speak in the mayhem. And it was a, you know, I say this, you guys know I'm pretty hyperbolic, but you know, show me a senior night that was more epic than that one, and I'll be excited to watch it, because this deal was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys earned it. And it's moments like that, and we had a lot of them during the season, that is what gets us through this deal about not having a postseason tournament. It's all we can look back on. You know, you guys were at Maui. We finished in third place in the Maui Invitational. I mean, come on. Without Yoli Childs, without Gavin Baxter, I mean, we had half a roster, and these guys rose up and finished, you know, beat Virginia Tech, who was on fire, and beat UCLA soundly, and kind of hung in there with Kansas. So it was a really special season, and that's what happens when you get seniors, man. They're magic.
You didn't just finish third at Maui, you finished third in one of the greatest Maui Invitationals we've ever seen. It was awesome. And I'm not just saying that because we were there. That's kind of a theme with you, by the way. You're on the 96 Kentucky team, one of the greatest college basketball teams of all time. You're in the 96 draft, one of the greatest drafts of all time. It just feels like you follow greatness wherever it goes. How is that something that you're aware of when you're in these moments? Do you just like stop and look around? You're like, how? Because like I said, we talked earlier about how you're in the locker room with Larry Bird. You're about to play Michael Jordan. Are you cognizant of this in every single moment you're in? Because it sort of feels like you are. It feels like you're a guy who appreciates the moment, and it doesn't take you 20 years to look back and say like, wow, this is crazy. I was a part of that. It feels like you know it in the moment that you're in it.
Well, I've been really blessed by this game. There's no doubt about it. But listen, it's also just, you know, I do believe this. I do believe that it's just the volume that you put out. If you put out enough volume, like you guys in your own sense are artists, right? So if you put out enough stuff, eventually you're going to stumble on something great, right? So we don't really talk about the 8 different times I was fired in my professional career, right? Like we just kind of gloss over that and go from the 96 championship to the Eastern Conference Finals to whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's the truth with most things. You know, you hear that all the time from, I want to say artists, and I'm saying that in every kind of genre of work, is that it's, you know, you see it in politics too. It's the volume of things that you put out more than I think it's genius, where eventually, you know, for me, I've eventually got lucky to be associated with a really good team where I don't have to do anything, but I get to claim some credit.
And Coach, we have to ask, I mean, how fortunate is it for you to have, you know, Roger Reed was the guy that people would point to with BYU and the way that they played. And, you know, they basically were a defensive first team, and you shoot threes. So you're the opposite of that. So you don't have to worry about competing with that version of the BYU team. That's great for your record and resume. You were able to obviously be inside the BYU system as an assistant coach before you come back. When you do come back, you were able to bring Jake Toulson, you know, with you, a guy you're familiar with. I mean, that whole situation, and like, how did you plan this out? Because if you look at it, it looks like you planned it out perfectly. Because you go to Wake Forest for a year, you know, you learn a little bit about the ACC and Jeff Bzdelik and, you know, the pro game from him, you know, and you just you popped around, and it worked in the perfect formula for your first year.
Yeah, I mean, well, listen, here's the thing, is this BYU program so good. You mentioned Roger Reed, but you think about Liddell Anderson, you think about the great Dave Rose, who did it better than anybody would probably ever do it at BYU. And you think about this fan base, which is, I think we're in the Final Four now for the best fan base in college sports, I think. And that stuff's true. Like, you know, it just is, it's not just the fan base that's here locally, but everywhere we go. You know, we went to play at Pepperdine our last game of the season. It's a small gym. I don't know, it seats 4,000, 3,800 or something. And 3,700 of the fans were BYU fans. And it was not only local BYU fans, but people that drove from Idaho and Nevada and other areas of California and Utah, because they just they were on this ride with us, and they just wanted to see this. They thought this might be the last game that they would actually get to be at it. You know, when you have a fan base like that, and you have a history like BYU has, it's been a program that's been built by these great coaches. It's hard to screw it up in the first year.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about one thing about the '96 Kentucky team. I could be lazy and ask you your thoughts on '96 Kentucky versus 2015 Kentucky and who's the better team. But I have a feeling I already know your answer with that one. So I'm going to say this.
Coach, we agree with that answer. We agree with you.
Yeah. Because you guys got the ring. It don't mean a thing if you don't have the ring, right? That's what they say. So I'm going to say this, Coach. I was doing research for this interview, and I came across a story that says that Rick Pitino's practices are legendary. How difficult Pitino's practices are. He pushes his guys. We all know about it. We know Rick Pitino's story career at this point. I read somewhere that someone was sharing a story that you were so determined to not be defeated by a Rick Pitino practice that you threw up in your jersey. You vomited in your jersey during practice instead of running to the trash can and taking a play off, and then tried to continue practicing. And basically everyone in the gym just looked at you like, what the hell is going on? Someone needs to check this guy out. Like what is going on in his head? Can you confirm or deny that this is a true story, Coach?
So we are playing in the Pyramid. I don't think we were playing Memphis. I can't remember who we were playing the next night, but you know, Coach Pitino, like I can't even describe how much I love this man, because he drove us so hard. He changed all of us, right? I'll love him forever. So it is a true story. We're in practice, and we're doing like a here, there, back kind of transition offense, transition defense drill. And you know, Coach P was like, you know, if your eye pops out and rolls down the court, you better pop it back in and jump back in the drill, right? I mean, that was kind of how we approached the game, and it was a great team, man. I mean, our second five, we had 9 guys from that team go to the NBA. So think about it. In our second 5, 4 dudes were NBA players. So you could never take a possession off. So I don't know. I was feeling sick all day long, and we're in transition, and I think we had just missed a shot. So I'm getting back, and I just had been so sick. So I tried to like, you know, you got a couple layers on. So just instinctively, I just kind of pulled my jersey down. I'm running down the floor, and it was all fine. Like, I don't think it was a big deal until we came back on the other end, and I think it was Scotty Padgett slipped in it. And then everyone was dying. They were like, this is so freaking nasty. And not my finest moment, gentlemen, but those kind of things you try and do when you're trying to stay alive.
You should have just said, this is West Coast basketball, baby. This is what we do.
That's right.
Oh my God. Yeah. Who says guys from the West Coast are soft? That's insane. That's hilarious. The other thing I have to ask you about is that research digs up on you. And I'm sure you've been asked a million times as your profile has continued to grow here. Your wife being an assistant for David Letterman, Coach. This is a true story as well.
Yeah, no, Leanne, my wife is Leanne Archibald. She was Dave's personal assistant for 4.5 years. And I'll tell you what was so, I mean, she got a million stories. You guys should really be talking to her. You'd be dying laughing. She's the funniest person I've ever met. And she's got an unbelievable background in basketball, which is another story. But so she's Dave's personal assistant. And in that capacity, you can imagine when Dave was in his prime, you kind of have the run of the city. Like she had connections everywhere.
Yep.
And so we get married. I'm playing for the Pacers, get fired from the Pacers. Kudos, by the way, for mentioning the great lacrosse Bobcats. I got story after story about that deal. And then we finally, with the Bucks, have a couple great years there, and then go play with the Knicks. And so we get to New York, and I'm like, I'm playing for I'm a New York Knickerbocker. Are you kidding me, right? So I'm feeling like I am the guy. Yep. So we start roaming around the city, going to great restaurants, doing the whole thing. And everywhere we go, it is like Miss Leanne, and then this must be her husband, right? I mean,
the other guy, yeah.
I keep not in that city. And they got unbelievable stories there. And man, we love New York. Great place.
Funny. You mentioned she's her father, of course, is a longtime basketball coach. She comes from a basketball family. Does she ever? Most women, if I'm stereotyping here, most coaches' wives aren't necessarily basketball people themselves. They just kind of marry into basketball. You have a different situation where your wife knows the game. Has there ever been an instance, and that comes to mind, where she got on you for a coaching decision after a game, where she's like, "What the hell were you?" Has there ever not been an instance? The way you're reacting.
Every game. Every game.
Every game.
Every game. Every decision.
And then the thing is Leanne loves these boys so much. Like, she is in it with them. She's in it with them and their families. So heaven forbid I cut a guy's minutes by a few minutes. Like, she is done with me. She's like, how you got to get him more shots. It's like she's the advocate for their parents or their posses, right?
Yeah, that's funny.
But it's a gift. I'll never forget one of the, she's in New York, I'm in Indiana. One of the first phone conversations we had when we first were introduced, she's talking to me about gray shirting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, it's red shirting. And she's like, no, there's red shirts and there's gray shirts. I was like, no, that can't be right. Sure enough. And ever since that day, she's been teaching me everything I need to know about college basketball. It's so fantastic. I'm really blessed that way.
Yeah, you are blessed. But Coach, you mentioned your wife getting involved. What about, you have the older players, and a lot of them are married, and I know that's a different situation than most coaches that are in college basketball. And so do you have the players' wives? Are they yelling at you too? I mean, how many people are yelling at you and are involved in this situation? How do you deal with all that? It seems like a lot of people to make happy all the time.
So we had before the season, we had a players' wives dinner where we had a few guys on the team that are married. So we kind of got them all together, and it was not the players, just their spouses and Leanne. And then Leanne let me come talk to them for a minute. And that's what we talked about. Like, hey guys, just know there's gonna be times in the season where you hate me with more passion than any other human being on earth. But what's really great is, these players, when they have a significant other, their journey, a spouse or significant other, their journey is so unique too. And everything that, as you guys can imagine, everything the players are experiencing, it's like their spouse or significant other is feeling tenfold, right? And so Leanne is such an unbelievable advocate for these women, and they're great women on their own right. I mean, I had two players that were married to Division I athletes also, and so I think it's actually a huge strength for us. It certainly was a strength for us this year. It brings a calmness and a continuity to the locker room that I think is really extraordinary.
Do you feel like you're on an island a little bit being at BYU, in that, like, as you said, you have players that are married, you have some of the challenges of, guys going on the mission trips, which is kind of unusual across college basketball. Obviously, I don't need to explain to you what makes BYU a unique school. Do you ever feel like, I guess you've only been at the job for a year now, but just, we're aware that coaches are like, if a guy transfers, sometimes a coach will call a coaching buddy and be like, hey, how do I deal with like this? My star player just transferred, or my guy wants to go pro. Do you feel like you're on an island with some of the things you have to deal with? Because I mean, that is unusual. I doubt that there are too many coaches you can call where you're like, hey, my starting five, all five of their wives are upset with me right now. And it's not like you can get Tom Izzo on the phone. He's gonna be like, Coach, I don't know how to help you with that. So is that something that you like? Yeah. Does that become a challenge, you think?
Yeah, but I also think it's a benefit. So you talk about these missions, right? So you can look at these missions like, how confusing is this when all of a sudden, you recruit a player that's going into his senior year, and you're actually not going to see him on your campus for 3.5 years, right? Or a player comes for a year, and then all of a sudden he's like, hey, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go on this mission for 2 years. And mind you, they're not going to train on these missions, right? They're going to serve. And so basketball really isn't a part of their existence. So, but, there's a flip side that's just extraordinary. And so just imagine this. You guys have been around sports forever. And when I talk about the best locker room in America, imagine you had 4 or 5 guys in your locker room that were 19-year-old kids that had shut down their whole life and paid their own way to go to some foreign land, foreign country where they don't know anybody, just to serve people for 2 years. And what you get from that is you get some young men that actually understand the concept that there's something bigger than themselves and their own agenda. And you sprinkle enough of that into a locker room, and all of a sudden your locker room can start to believe that there's something more important than their own personal agendas. And I think that's a winning formula. I think it's a gift. I think it's a huge advantage that we have here that is hard to replicate. So with all the easily seen challenges, I think there's some really special things that can come from that if we manage it right. So I think there's some real advantages.
Coach, one thing that we want to get addressed here while we have you, I've been calling you, and we've probably just indoctrinated this into our program, but we wanted to come up with a nickname, right? This is your first year at BYU. We go to the Maui Invitational. We obviously see that you're going to be a guy that's going to be around. So we've been calling you the Young Pope. And obviously there's an HBO show. I don't know if you watch the show, but we've just been calling you the Young Pope. But then obviously, you know, you're at BYU. The Pope doesn't have the same kick to it there. So we're trying to figure out what the best nickname is. Do you have a nickname? You know what I mean? What would you like to be called, or should we just keep it simple and call you Coach Pope?
Man, you guys are way smarter than me. I have no idea. Hopefully I can just keep a job for another day, gentlemen.
Yeah,
we're trying to hang in there.
All right. I've been asking. We've had a handful of coaches come on recently since the quarantine has started, and I've turned this into a little bit where I throw this question of, if you have to be quarantined with somebody, who are you picking? And I pick 3 people that are notable from their life. So for you, I'm going to ask you this, Coach. Pick your quarantine partner between these 3 people: BYU legend Danny Ainge, who was also in Maui. We saw that he was in Maui. And by the way, before I get to that, how much of an influence does Danny Ainge have on the program? I was surprised to see him in Maui. I'm sure he was under the guise of him scouting for the Celtics, but he was wearing BYU stuff. He's cheering for you guys. Like, we all know he was there because BYU was there. Is he an active participant still? Like, do you feel his presence as the coach at BYU?
Yeah, he's been awesome. He's been so great to us. He loves BYU. I mean, it's his alma mater, and his heart is there. And he's been incredibly supportive of me personally. You know, he's a guy who can call and listen, from that, gathering information from that league down to our league in terms of style of play, in terms of attacking certain situations, in terms of personnel evaluations and personnel development is huge. And he's one of the best in the business. I mean, what he's done in Boston consistently, going against the grain consistently, right? The first big 3, and then you know, some hiring decisions that he made that were very counterintuitive but have proven to be extraordinary. He's really good. So he's been a great advocate for the program.
You got some shine, as an aside, on the first part of the doc too, playing golf with Jordan before he Jordan torched him, but his team got the win. That's what matters most. All right, so back to the original premise. We're picking Danny Ainge, your first professional coach, Larry Bird, or the man who you won a national championship with, Rick Pitino. If you have to quarantine with one of those 3 guys, who are you picking, Coach?
Man, that's not easy because I love Coach P so much. But I'll tell you, you know, I got to spend 2 years with Coach Bird. And he was really, really generous with me. He was really, really generous with me in terms of spending time with me as a bad player, right? He just kind of stuck around the gym for hours after practice, as well as I did. And there were times when he would just kind of relax and break into telling me stories that I had actually watched as a fan growing up, right? And I do think he might be one of the smartest, most intuitive guys in basketball. So to further my basketball growth, I might choose Coach Bird. But in terms of a storyteller, there's nobody in the world better than Coach P, man.
All right.
This guy.
All right. We love that.
So if I want to be entertained, I'm going with Coach P because he can tell a story.
Yeah.
It's hard.
That might get annoying though, you know, like day 13 of the quarantine, you might be like, Coach, shut the hell up. I've heard that one a million times.
No. I would never use those words with Coach.
Yeah, that's true.
Coach actually came out to, you know, he came out to visit my team at Utah Valley last year, year before this season. And I asked him to come out and spend some time with us. So he came out And it seemed like such a great idea at the time, but as it got closer to him flying out, I started to realize I was going to go have to pick this cat up from the airport, right? And you want to talk about clinically diagnosable PTSD. Every single one of us that played for him has that. There is no doubt. So a week before he's coming, I start breaking out into cold sweats every single night. I'm like, what are we going to talk about? What is he going to do to me? I'm going to be in the car with him from 45 minutes from the airport to the gym. It turned out to be one of the greatest visits of all time. But Coach is I'm not messing with Coach, man. He's too much of a father figure, and I'm too scared of him still.
Yeah, a godfather figure. We were going to say, I would be worried he was coming there to take your job at that point. He might be.
If there was ever a Don in college basketball, it is Coach P. There's no doubt about it.
Just be sure, let it go to voicemail when you get the call. He's going to try to schedule you guys now that he's at Iona.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to try to intimidate you. In the back of his mind, I'm just letting you know this. He's going to present it as though it's like a friendly thing where it's like, Coach Pope, why don't you let me bring my guys out there? It'll be a nice friendly thing. What he's going to do, he's going to do the bait and switch, get you on the sideline, then he's going to turn because he's going to know that he can always intimidate you. He's always got you in the palm of his hand. Don't buy into it. Just hang up the phone.
And how
if
about
he calls
this
the
cat?
schedule, just hang up the phone.
He takes the job, and like a week later, he signs 7 players. I mean,
Oh man. Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate talking to you. You have made 2 fans with Tate and I this past season, following you and continued success with BYU and wherever your career takes you. It's been a joy to watch you this year. So thank you for joining us, Coach.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. And listen up. So you guys need to put it on your calendar. Come out to a game. Let me host you at a game. You guys will dig this joint, man. It's unbelievable.
We would love to do it. We are 100% doing it. No questions asked. We're in. So. All right. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
For the best access, perspective, and personalities in all of sports, follow us at Fox Sports on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.